Happy Easter everyone, and welcome back to this series. Today we will begin a new chapter. We will break down every aspect of matter. I'd like to thank everyone who wishes to keep watching this series. You're welcome here. Now, let's get started. Matter is the substance of which entities are made. However, what is matter made of? It cannot be made of matter, because that would be an infinite regress. Look at this. An entity is composed. If we take a look at each of its parts, then we see that they are composed as well. And again, each part of the part is also composed. This series of smaller and smaller parts cannot go on forever. And thus we must arrive at a point so small such that further dividing it wouldn't make sense. This ultimate small part would not be made of matter, but rather it would be much more similar to an abstract concept. An immaterial atom. This is the only way we can divide matter without the series being infinite. Oh, look at that, it's quantum physics. Apparently, according to our modern understanding of physics, the smallest particles aren't little balls made of matter, but are rather more accurately described as a wave of probability fluctuating in the quantum field. That's exactly what we've theorized. Matter is not made of matter.
But Thomas, does that mean matter doesn't exist?
Yes, ultimately, matter is merely an emerging property of immaterial form. Matter is just how we see immateriality.
Seriously? Are you telling me there are no little balls spinning inside every object?
Yes.
I don't trust it.
You would have to reject all of quantum physics to maintain that belief.
Well, what if I did? Can't I make up my own bullshit belief while science tries to fill the holes in our knowledge?
No. This means not only that matter isn't the only substance that exists, but that matter itself does not exist. It's an illusion. All that exists is immateriality condensed to a microscopic subatomic quantum wave of probability and information. Now, this looks very edgy Reddit atheist teen, but I'm not telling you the universe doesn't have a meaning. I already told you that the existence of finality cannot be denied. However, it is true that nothing exists as we know it.
But wait, if matter doesn't exist, then what is this?
What?
This pencil is made of matter, but you claim matter doesn't exist. Then what's this?
If unicorns don't exist, then what is this?
That's a representation of a unicorn.
Exactly. Now, there is another problem. How small can an entity be before being transformed into an immaterial object? We actually know the value of that length. It's the Planck length. Anything below this value simply stops making sense. It is the universal pixel of space. From this length we can also figure out the smallest amount of time and energy possible. This means that, on a subatomic scale, space looks like a grid. An incredibly huge net of small pixels between which you cannot go. Movement is directly passing from one to the other. Same with time, composed of small instants. This solves so many things that it could work even as a theory of everything. In fact, there is a theory of everything called loop quantum gravity, or LQG, and it is basically the exact same thing I just said. Well, almost exactly. Ignore the big bounce bullshit. We already talked about why such event is not possible. And the universe definitely wasn't created that way. Speaking of creation, see you next time. Hello everyone. Today we will reveal the nature of creation. How does matter become matter? And why doesn't it remain an immaterial substance as we saw it is in the first episode? Let's start. Let's go with order. We said matter is a material at an absolutely small scale. But why doesn't it stay a material even in large scales? Well, some actually does. As we've seen, immaterial matter is just a mathematical perturbation in space-time. It is best described as a wave, and there exist plenty of wave functions in reality. The thing is, why some of them do not stay waves and become matter? Quantum physics can help again here. We will take a look at the double-slit experiment. In this experiment, electrons are fired through a double slit, and it was observed that they form a wave-like pattern when they are not measured, and a particle-like pattern when they are measured. That's exactly what we were looking for. There are plenty of studies around this experiment, so I won't talk long about it. But you must notice that the transformation from an immaterial wave of mathematical probabilities into actual particles occurs when an electron is measured. It has also been noticed that the observer must be conscious. In other words, according to quantum physics, for some reason, intellect creates matter. Here's an interesting fact. In the experiment, when the electron is a wave, it passes through both slits simultaneously. This cannot happen logically, as the electron would occupy two places at the same time. However, material objects cannot be in two places at the same time because of form. The form of an object contains all information about that object, including location. If the electron has no definite location, then it has no form. In fact, everything that is material has a form, and the electron is not material. Therefore, it is possible that it is a formless substance. Now, if you remember, form is closely related to intellect, and we have seen with the experiment that form emerges only when the substance is observed by a conscious observer. Intellect creates form. And what does create form? Yes, the cause. Therefore, the generation of the form from the cause is a direct act of the intellect. This gives a hint on how the universe began. According to our current understanding, we know the universe began as a singularity, an infinitely small point, and then space began expanding further and further, releasing more and more matter. But there is a problem. How could there be matter if there were no humans? We know there must be a conscious observer in order to spark the Big Bang, but no human was around. Actually, nothing at all was around. This means that, in order for the universe to exist, there had to be a conscious observer in the beginning. If there was no conscious observer, then form wouldn't have existed, and matter wouldn't have existed as well. However, you have to remember that the Big Bang started alongside time and space. Existence is beyond time and space, and therefore it wasn't affected by the Big Bang. Existence is the only thing that wasn't created by the Big Bang, and this means that the only conscious observer that there could be was existence. We can now draw a clear picture of the beginning. In the beginning was the form, and the form was with existence, and the form was existence. It was with existence in the beginning. Through the form all things were made. Without it nothing was made that has been made. This is all for today. In the following episodes we will talk about other aspects and qualities of matter. See you next time. Be well. Hello everyone. We've spoken for a long time of movement and matter. I think it's finally time to talk about the nature of movement. That is, forces. Let's start. There exist two kinds of forces, real forces and illusory forces. Illusory forces include inertia, they're forces that appear to be there, but are actually not, while real forces are the strong and weak nuclear interactions. And most importantly, the electromagnetic interaction. The nuclear interactions are responsible for the creation of protons and neutrons and for radioactive decay, while the electromagnetic interaction is responsible for everything else.
But Thomas, me pushing an object is an electromagnetic force. It's because of me.
You see, every force is really an electromagnetic force brought to time massive scale. Let me explain that more carefully. Every fundamental particle, such as electrons, have a property called electric charge, which describes how they exchange virtual photons and react to those exchanges. Virtual photons are immaterial particles stemming from quantum mechanics. When an electron creates a virtual photon, it launches it to the closest particles and thus experiences a recoil due to the intrinsic symmetry of the universe. According to the electric charge of the receiving particle, it either experiences a recoil as well if it's negatively charged, or gets attracted towards the electron if it is positively charged. The reason this happens is because the virtual photon carries a momentum, which is perceived as positive by negatively charged particles, and negatively by positively charged particles. Forces of physical interaction are thus electromagnetic interactions expanded to our scale. The strong and weak nuclear interactions work exactly the same, but they exchange other types of virtual particles instead of photons. When a particle moves, however, its electric field gets disturbed by the change in space-time. This disturbance generates a new force, which is the magnetic force. The magnetic field is thus linked to the electric one. Hence our act of merging the two. These disturbances propagate in space, creating electromagnetic waves. Those waves are responsible for light and heat. Depending on how fast the particle is moving, the electromagnetic wave propagates with more or less heat. This determines wavelength, and we can only see a small portion of those wavelengths.
But Thomas, you didn't talk about gravity yet. How do you explain the gravitational force with this model of yours?
Simple. As you saw, all of those phenomena emerge from symmetry. Gravity also emerges from symmetry. The pressure created by the amount of materials inside of an object make that object expand. And, since for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, space itself must contract towards the center of the object in order to balance the pressure. The curvature also affects time, of course, and therefore an object that moves through time will change its direction in accordance with the curvature. Gravity is not a force, it is a phenomenon, emerging from the intrinsic symmetry of the universe. This was all about forces. Next time we will focus on the end times. How will the universe end? See you next time. Be well. Hello everyone. Today we will talk about the end times. How will the universe end and what will happen then? Let's get started. It is currently believed that there are three ways in which the universe could end: the Big Crunch, the Big Rip, and the Heat Death. The Big Crunch will happen if gravity prevails and the expansion of the universe is decelerated to the point where the entire universe collapses again on itself. The Big Rip is the scenario where the expansion prevails over gravity and every atom is eventually detached from one another, while the Heat Death is a mix of the two, where the universe kind of melts on itself. Let's go through each one of them and see which is more likely. The universe is currently expanding. This is due to the effect of dark energy. If dark energy gets stronger, the expansion of the universe will accelerate, and eventually it will win over the effect of gravity. Galaxies will be torn apart, then planets will be moved away from their home stars, and they will gradually explode because of their internal pressure. Lastly, all matter will lose its gravitational pull, and atoms will be put apart from each other never to be seen again. The universe will be literally ripped apart. This scenario is improbable, since calculations suggest that dark energy will not become strong enough to defeat gravity, therefore the universe likely won't be torn apart. If dark energy gets weaker, however, gravity will defeat it, and the expansion of the universe will be stopped and, eventually, reversed. This will increase the weight of objects, planets will get compressed, stars and galaxies will collapse together, until the entire mass of the universe will be concentrated in its center just like in the beginning. The state of the universe will thus return to its origins, and because this state is highly unstable, it is likely that there will be another Big Bang and another universe will form, suggesting this process has happened and will happen infinitely. This is the most bullshit of the three theories. The main problem is the infinite duration of matter, which I already explained was impossible. In addition, calculations also suggest that gravity will not increase to a point where such scenario may be expected. The most likely outcome of the end times is therefore the heat death of the universe. In this scenario, the expansion of the universe goes on at a constant rate, and gravity remains stable. This environment allows for entropy to increase. Entropy is commonly defined as the grade of disorder in a system. It is what makes matter want to occupy empty spaces instead of sticking together. In a low entropy system, most particles are concentrated in a single location, while in a high entropy system, particles tend to spread evenly throughout the entire space. Naturally, entropy tends to increase in closed systems, which means that, if gravity and dark matter do not alter the situation, entropy will likely increase to maximum. Matter will slowly be detached from itself and solid objects will melt into a formless substance. The entire universe will contain the same density, and every particle will be fixed and stable in its point in space. This outcome is the most likely, because it is what naturally happens when dark energy and gravity are both stable. Therefore, the universe will likely end as an enormous bowl of uniform formless matter. Interestingly, there is a tiny chance that random quantum fluctuations, after the heat death, will happen in such a way as to recreate the universe in a specific situation. We can't be sure when it will happen, but there is a chance. This was all for today. We have examined the beginning, the present, and now the end. Join me next time. Until then, be well. Hello everyone. Today will be a relaxing video. You probably know by now that when relaxing videos come up it means we're approaching the end of the chapter. I will probably shock many of you today, but honestly I don't give a fuck. Let's now talk about the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. I know what you are probably thinking.
But Thomas, are you saying that the Earth is not revolving around the Sun?
Yes, kind of. Let me explain. We all know that the Sun is at the center of the solar system, and the Earth revolves around its axis. This obviously means that the Sun is static, and therefore it is the center of the universe.
Wait, the Sun is not the center of the universe, and it's moving.
Exactly. You see what I did there? The Sun is not static, it is revolving around the Milky Way, which is also moving in the universe. Everyone uses the heliocentric model, but it presupposes that the Sun is static, while it is not. The Sun is revolving around the galaxy, and so is the Earth. Days and seasons happen because of the peculiar rotation of the Earth around the Milky Way. By simply changing the physical frame of reference, we proved that the Earth does not revolve around the Sun, but the galactic center. So then, what happened with the Copernican revolution? I will tell you. Before the heliocentric model, the main model used to describe the Earth's rotation was the geocentric Ptolemaic model. The Ptolemaic model was extremely helpful and intuitive to understand how days and seasons worked. It was perfect for ancient and medieval societies, which were mainly concerned with the Earth. However, after the Renaissance, we started looking at the stars, and wondered how do the heavenly bodies move overall. We checked the geocentric model, but it was extremely difficult to use for calculations about the celestial spheres, because the orbits were not elliptical. However, Copernicus noticed that the Sun's orbit was the only elliptical one, and wondered what would happen if we changed the frame of reference from a static Earth to a static Sun. This simplified calculations massively, and therefore the model was adopted by everyone. However, with time, people started believing that the Sun was actually static at the center of the universe, while Copernicus had only swapped the frame of reference to simplify calculations. Nowadays, we all believe the Earth to be moving and revolving around the Sun, but as I showed you before, by changing the frame of reference, we see that it is not the case, since they are both moving around the galaxy. The various models are just used to simplify calculations according to specific needs. But we must remember that there is currently no way of scientifically determining whether the Earth is static, revolving around the Sun, or revolving around the galactic center. In order to know what is static, we would have to know where is the precise center of the universe. Yet this is impossible, because the universe is expanding, and it is expanding everywhere. This means that all matter is getting farther from each other, and we cannot point out where it has been expanding first. Just to make you understand, maybe, the universe began expanding from the center of the Earth, and therefore the Earth is the center of the universe, static, with all of the solar system revolving around it. This would mean that the Ptolemaic system was right, but we have no way of proving it right or wrong, just like the heliocentric model. This was all for today. As always, I will be there next week with more philosophical content. See you then. Be well.
You don't understand? Just look in this telescope and you will see that I'm right.
No.
Then stop complaining about what I believe.
Listen, Galileo, I'm a 17th century man. I have never seen a telescope in my entire life. I know nothing about optics, just like every other person in the world right now. I have no guarantee that that thing will actually make me see things better instead of more distorted. It's as if I told you that talking rocks exist, and in order to check that you would have to look in this crystal ball.
Oh, I guess you're right then.
Good. Now abjure your belief before this conversation ends up like the one with Giordano Bruno.
Sì, allora praticamente la magia tutto è controllato dalla magia, non capisci? Devo creare un cristianesimo egizio esoterico.
Is that English money?
No, è solo una bacchetta magica.
Get the fuck out of here right now.
Hello everyone. Today will be the last episode of physics, and we are going to talk about life. What differentiates living beings from non-living beings, and how can living beings be divided? Let's start right now. Let's consider this. We can see that every living being has the ability to move in some way, either through space or through immateriality. What I mean by that is, a living being has a perception, it is able to react to changes, and do things by itself. A living being is able to perform acts on its own, without being moved by external forces.
But Thomas, what about chemical reactions? Like if I mix sodium and potassium with water, it will explode by itself, yet the mixture isn't alive. How do you explain that?
First of all, those are two different entities mixed together, not one. Second of all, those entities did not come together on their own. They would not have done anything if you didn't put them together. There is the help of an external force. Now, obviously life forms can be differentiated, and we will differentiate the various life forms by how complex they are. A life form that is complex will tend to preserve its low entropy, while a more simple life form has more trouble not generating entropy. The more complex you are, the least entropy you generate. This is because life forms generate very little entropy, as they can obtain energy from the surrounding environment. If we try to rank all living beings by the amount of entropy they produce, we would get something similar to this. The living beings who produce the most entropy are plants, followed by the animal kingdom, between animals, passing from insects to cats to monkeys, and then we come to mankind. That's right, we are the ones who produce the least entropy in the entire universe. Although actually immaterial beings produce even less, since they're not material, but if we're going to add them, then we would need to add also minerals and non-living beings. So let's just stick to the entities which possess life. There is something interesting. This composition is the exact composition of nature described by Aristotle, Plato, and all other philosophers in history. Aristotle divided the three kingdoms as such, because he thought plants had only the ability to live, animals had the ability to sense and move too, and humans had the ability to perform intellectual acts as well. You can see it in the Scala Naturae, the most used model of reality in antiquity, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and the modern era.
Thomas, I don't believe you. What you are basically saying is that humans are superior to animals? Actually, all animals matter, and we are no different from them. There is nothing that puts us in a privileged position.
We, humans, are on top of the ladder. We produce the least amount of entropy, meaning our very existence slows down the death of the universe. As you may remember, in fact, the universe will die because of entropy. And anything that generates little entropy slows down the end of creation. Plants or animals do their jobs, even inanimate objects, but we are the ones who do it best. Our very existence constantly means we are fighting against the collapse of the universe itself. This is what I would call a privileged position. We see plants as not really reacting at all to stimuli, and their movement is pretty much based on automatic reflexes, while animals are driven by their instincts. They do what they feel is better. But they are able to understand things, and humans do definitely have something different from animals. This is a very interesting topic, to know what is the difference between humans and animals. Some say intelligence, some say nothing, some say we can build complex stuff. But in the end, there is only one thing that separates us from animals. And that thing is